Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. My wife handed my first-class seat to her brother at O'Hare, smiled like it was cute, then leaned close and said, "Be a man," like my dignity was something she could trade for points. Here's how it happened. We live in a two-bedroom apartment above a laundromat on the south side of Chicago, where the hallway always smelled like warm detergent and somebody's fried food. Every morning, the dryers downstairs started humming before sunrise, like the building was breathing. I'm Dr. Jordan Price, an ER physician, the kind of job that teaches you to stay steady when alarms go off. I kept my life quiet on purpose, keys in the same bowl, coffee black, jazz low. My calm wasn't an act. It was my baseline. Brielle Vaughn Price wasn't quiet. She was bright, fast, and magnetic. An entrepreneur. She said it like a title you couldn't question. When she brainstormed, she chewed cinnamon gum and paced barefoot, her acrylic nails ticking against her phone like a metronome. When she laughed, she threw her head back like she wanted the whole room to hear it. In the beginning, I loved that she filled space. I thought it meant she'd fill ours with joy. We met at a fundraiser in Hyde Park, one of those events where everybody wears confidence like cologne. She told me she liked my voice because it didn't chase attention. "You don't perform," she said, watching me the way people watch Card Trick. I told her I liked how she looked at the world like it owed her opportunity. She smiled and said, "It does." It was bold. It was funny. It was dangerous in a way I didn't recognize yet. Early Brielle was romantic in small, specific ways. She'd text me a photo of a sunset from the parking lot and write, "Your shift is stealing you from me again." When I got off work, she'd meet me outside the hospital with a paper bag of fries, then feed me one like I was a kid she liked spoiling. We'd sit in my car with the heat blasting in January, laughing about nothing. Patients I couldn't talk about, clients she didn't want to name, both of us pretending the world wasn't heavy. She teased my routines the way people tease what they secretly envy. If I lined up my work badge, stethoscope, and pen, she'd say, "Look at you, Mr. Order." If I played jazz while cooking, she'd sway dramatically and announce, "Welcome to Dr. Price's fine dining experience," then steal a taste and pretend to critique it. I'd roll my eyes and let her have the first bite anyway. Those nights felt like our own little country, safe, private, unbothered. The first real crack showed up in a place that should have been harmless, a late-night diner off 79th, the kind with sticky menus and coffee that tastes like it's been thinking about being coffee. I went to pay and realized my phone wasn't on the table. Brielle had it in her hand, face calm, eyes scanning. "Who's my, she asked, like she was reading a weather report. I said, "A resident. She's updating me about labs." Brielle's mouth tightened. "So residents just text you at midnight?" I explained it once. Then again, slower, like clarity could replace trust. Brielle didn't soften. She didn't say, "My bad." She slid my phone back like I'd inconvenienced her. "Men in scrubs think they can do anything," she said, and went back to stirring her coffee. In the booth's reflection, I watched myself smile politely, like I was talking to a stranger who'd gotten the wrong idea. Inside, my pride told me not to beg for fairness. My denial told me it was a one-off. It wasn't. It became a pattern. Her suspicion, my calm response, her refusal to take responsibility for the accusation. If I got a call from the hospital on a day off, she'd ask, "Why do they always need you?" with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. If my phone buzzed while we watched TV, she'd glance over like it had offended her. When I said, gently, "Stop treating me like I'm doing something wrong," she'd tilt her head and say, "If you weren't, you wouldn't be so defensive." Brielle had a way of making my boundaries sound like flaws. If I asked for quiet after a difficult shift, she'd say, "You always have a reason to shut down." If I wanted a plan before spending, she'd call me uptight and kiss my cheek like that erased the insult. She was charming in public, touching my arm, introducing me as my husband the doctor, and sharp in private, like she saved her worst tone for the person she assumed couldn't leave. Then Deshawn started showing up more. Her brother had a loud presence and a relaxed disrespect, the kind that walks into your space like it belongs there. He'd knock once and step in, jacket tossed over our chair, shoes kicked off like he paid rent. He called me Doc, with a grin at the end, like my job was a joke he could borrow. Doc, you got a charger? Doc, you got some water? Doc, you got it, right? He asked for things like he was collecting proof I'd say yes. Brielle loved her brother loudly, the way she loved anything that validated her. She'd defend him automatically, even when he was wrong. If Deshaun made a mess, she'd laugh. If he broke a promise, she'd shrug. If he spoke to me sideways, she'd say, "That's just how he jokes." The first time I told her, "I don't like how he talks to me," she sighed like I was ruining a good time. "Jordan, don't be like that," she said, already picking a side. There was a night in Bronzeville, at a small restaurant where the lights were warm and the music stayed low, like the place respected people's conversations. Brielle looked beautiful. She always did when she chose to. Deshaun slid into our booth without asking and ordered the most expensive thing on the menu like he was on a date with entitlement. When the check came, Brielle didn't look at it. She looked at me. Deshaun laughed. "Doc got it. Doesn't he always?" I paid because I didn't want a scene. In the car, I said, "I need you to hear me." Brielle stared out the window, gum snapping once. "You're mad about dinner?" "I'm mad about disrespect," I said. She scoffed. "He's family. You're making it weird." That word, weird, was one she used to shrink any feeling she didn't want to deal with. If I pushed, she got colder. "You want respect? Then act like it," she said, like respect was something you earn from your spouse by not asking for it. My flaw wasn't weakness. It was pride mixed with hope, dangerous together. In the ER, calm saves lives. At home, my calm became her excuse. "You're fine," she'd say, whenever she crossed a line. "You're strong. You don't need all this talking." I started swallowing moments that deserve confrontation because I didn't want to be the man arguing in a parking lot or raising his voice in a kitchen. I told myself composure was dignity. I didn't realize silence can also be permission. The public jabs began like jokes. At a friend's birthday in the West Loop, Brielle clinked her glass and said, laughing, "I love my husband, but he's basically a grandpa. He's always tired, always serious." People chuckled. Someone slapped my shoulder like it was friendly. I smiled because that's what I do when I refuse to give someone the satisfaction of watching me flinch. Later, in the Uber, I said, "I didn't like that." Brielle sighed. "Oh my God, it's true. I'm just honest." "Honesty isn't the same as disrespect," I said. She turned her face toward me, eyes bright with irritation. "Here you go," she snapped, with that therapist voice, trying to sound smarter than me. I looked out at the city lights sliding by and felt something hot in my chest. Anger, then shame for feeling anger. I kept thinking, why can't she just say sorry? But Brielle didn't apologize when she was wrong. She replaced apologies with explanations and explanations with attacks. When she was really angry, she pulled out the threat like it was a remote control. "I'll leave," she'd say, walking away. "Don't think I won't. I can do better." It was always delivered casually, like ordering coffee. And because she was sweet again afterward, because she'd cook, laugh, flirt, post pictures, I started doubting myself. I'd stare at her sleeping face and tell myself I was overreacting. I kept rereading her tone in my head, not because I didn't understand it, but because I needed to believe I was misinterpreting it. I try to fix things the way I fix chaos at work, with structure, date nights, plans, clear conversations. Brielle treated structure like control. "You schedule love," she'd say, rolling her eyes, even though she liked the nice restaurants and the little weekend trips. I took her to a comedy show near River North, and she laughed until she cried, then grabbed my hand and said, "You're my safe place." That line held me for weeks. I didn't notice how safe place slowly started meaning quiet place I can step on. Deshaun's presence grew heavier. He always had an emergency. His car note, his rent, his business idea needed a quick loan. Brielle would bring it up like she was asking what we wanted for dinner. "Deshaun needs help," she'd say. If I asked questions, her face would harden. "You're really going to sit here and count his problems?" "I'm going to protect our household," I'd answer. She'd laugh. "Dr. Money got you acting brand new." Then she'd tell Deshaun, loudly, he's tripping, like my concerns were entertainment. One Saturday, Brielle and I were folding laundry our clothes warm from the downstairs laundromat, smelling like lavender sheets. It should have been normal. Deshawn came up the stairs with a bag of takeout like he lived there, then flopped onto our couch and turned on the TV without asking. Brielle beamed at him. Deshawn eyed me and said, "Doc, you look stressed. You need a vacation." "I'm fine," I said. He smirked. "That's what y'all quiet dudes always say. Then y'all snap." Brielle laughed like he'd told a joke. I watched Brielle laugh at him talking about me, like I was a stereotype. I felt my face stay calm, while something inside me pulled back. That was new, the withdrawal. Not sulking, not punishing, just an internal step away, like you'd moved out of a room without leaving the building. That night, after Brielle fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my legal pad. I didn't write about my feelings. I wrote facts, dates, moments. Who said what? My handwriting was neat like it mattered. People think leaving starts with a fight. Mine started with documentation. Because I knew Brielle's gift. She could charm a room into believing her version. And I knew my weakness. I stayed quiet so long that if I finally spoke, people might think it came out of nowhere. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning clarity. Every time she dismissed me, every time she insulted me, every time she used Deshawn to humiliate me, I wrote it down. Not to punish her. To remind myself I wasn't imagining it. Brielle noticed my change, but she misread it. "You've been acting differently," she said one evening, tapping her nails against her glass. "Are you mad?" "No," I said honestly. I wasn't mad anymore. "Then what?" she asked. I shrugged. "I'm thinking." Brielle laughed. "Don't think too hard, Jordan. You'll hurt yourself." She smiled when she said it, like it was cute. I smiled back, because my face had learned to behave. Inside, I felt the first real grief, quiet, heavy, undeniable. The trip that led to O'Hare started as Brielle's idea. She landed a spot at a small business expo in Los Angeles, and she was thrilled. Hair done, outfit planned, voice bright. "This could change everything," she said, chewing cinnamon gum like she was chewing confidence. I was proud of her, genuinely. I booked the flights as a gift, used points I'd saved from hospital travel and conferences. I chose first class because she hated feeling cramped and because I thought comfort could be kindness. The night before we flew out, Deshawn came over to help with something that didn't need help. He sat at our table while Brielle packed, scrolling on his phone, making comments. "LA? That's what I'm talking about," he said. "You'll need a +1?" Brielle laughed. "Stop." Deshawn looked at me. "Doc, you got that doctor's money. Bring me." I didn't laugh. Brielle did. "He's joking," she said, as if that automatically erased the disrespect. In the morning, Chicago was bitter cold. The kind of wind that finds skin under your coat and punishes it. Brielle wore a long camel coat and sunglasses like she was already on the red carpet. Deshawn tagged along to the airport because he wanted breakfast. I should have questioned that. I didn't. Again, pride, hope, denial. At O'Hare, Deshawn trailed us like a shadow, cracking jokes and calling me Doc every third sentence. Brielle's laughter sounded too bright for the hour. At the gate, we stood in line. I held our boarding passes in my hand, neat stack, everything in order like my brain needed it. Deshawn leaned into Brielle and said loud enough for me to hear, "I know you got first class. Don't do me like that." Brielle smiled and said, "Relax." Then she glanced at me with a look that wasn't asking. It was deciding. I felt my stomach drop just a little, like my body knew before my mind admitted it. The agent announced first-class boarding. I stepped forward past Reddy. Brielle's hand slid in, smooth as a pickpocket. She plucked my first-class pass from my fingers and turned, no hesitation, placing it in Deshawn's palm. Deshawn's grin widened like he'd won a bet. "That's love," he said. I stared at Brielle. "Brielle," I said quietly, "that's my seat." She leaned in, smiled small, eyes sharp. "Be a man," she murmured. "You'll survive." Then she walked ahead like nothing happened. People around us pretended not to watch, but airports are theaters. Everybody notices. I felt heat rise in my face, shame, anger, disbelief, all of it trying to force its way out. I wasn't satisfied. I nodded once. "All right." Brielle's smirk returned, confident and smug. She thought my calm meant surrender. She didn't understand that my calm had changed. It wasn't patience anymore. It was the final form of detachment. I boarded the economy and sat down like I belonged there. My seat was near the wing, the kind where the engine noise makes you feel boxed in. I put my earbuds in and played jazz low, not because I wanted music, but because I needed a barrier between me and what I felt. I watched Brielle settle into first class with Deshawn, laughing, posing for a picture she didn't post yet. She turned once, glanced back at me, and smiled like she'd trained me. I looked away. My hands were steady. My chest felt hollow. On flights, I usually sleep. That day I thought. I opened my notes app and wrote a single sentence. O'Hare seat, be a man, public. Then I texted my friend from residency, Nia, who'd become an attorney after med school. Need a clean separation process. No drama. Call when you can. My thumb hovered over for half a second. Not because I wasn't sure, because I was grieving what that text meant. Then I pressed send. Halfway through the flight, Brielle walked back with that public wife glow. You good? She asked, voice sweet enough to fool strangers. She leaned down and kissed my forehead quickly, like a performance cue. See, she whispered. Not that hard. I looked up at her face, beautiful, familiar, distant. I'm good, I said. She smiled and walked away like she'd handled child. I sat there and realized something painful. She enjoyed humiliating me because she believed I'd never leave. Los Angeles was bright and dry, so different from Chicago's cold that it felt like stepping into someone else's life. Brielle glided through the expo like she belonged there, laughing too loud, handing out cards, saying love that and absolutely in a practiced tone. I stayed close but quiet, observing. Deshawn followed her like a bodyguard who wanted attention, commenting on women, asking people for discounts, calling me Doc like I was a mascot. Brielle didn't correct him once. She smiled and kept moving. The hotel room was small but nice, with a view of traffic and palm trees. That first night, Brielle flopped onto the bed and said, See, this trip is good for us. Deshawn's laughter echoed from the hallway. He'd gotten a room on our floor because Brielle insisted. Why is he here? I asked softly. Brielle's face tightened. Don't start, she said. He's my brother. You're not going to control me. I stared at her, then nodded once. Okay. She mistook that for defeat, too. The next morning, she woke up cheerful, like last night hadn't happened. That whiplash used to confuse me. Now it clarified everything. I watched her apply lip gloss in the mirror, humming, cinnamon gum snapping. You're being weird, she said casually, sensing my silence. I'm not being anything, I replied. I'm just here. Brielle turned and smiled. Good, she said. Stay there. She meant it as a joke. It landed like a verdict. On the flight back, the same dynamic repeated without the same sting, because the sting had already done its job. Deshawn lounged in first class, taking selfies, making comments. Brielle laughed, pleased. I sat in economy, wrote a list of practical steps in my notes app, and felt my emotions turn into something usable, resolve. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was building an exit with the same care I used to chart a patient. Methodical, documented, time-stamped, legal. Back in Chicago, the air hit us like a slap, cold, sharp, familiar. At home, Brielle tossed her coat on the chair and said, like she was discussing groceries, next time don't be dramatic. Deshawn needed that seat. You're a grown man. I looked at her. There were 100 responses I could have given. I chose the truth. It wasn't about the seat, I said. Brielle rolled her eyes. Here we go, she muttered. Man up, she added, walking away, like she was closing the conversation with a stamp. That night, I did my routine anyway, shower, scrub my hands too long, stare at the steam like it could erase last year. I stood in the bathroom and watched my own face in the mirror. Calm eyes, tired mouth. I thought about the version of me who used to drive across town with fries for Brielle because it made her smile. I thought about the version of Brielle who used to meet me outside the hospital and call me her safe place. I felt grief, not for her exactly, for the lie I'd been living in. The next morning, I went to work like normal. In trauma bays, I was steady. With the nurses, I was polite. With patients, I was kind. My life didn't collapse because my marriage was. That's one thing people don't talk about. You could be heartbroken and still functional. After my shift, I didn't rush home. I went for a long walk through Jackson Park, hands in my coat pockets, letting the cold clear my head. I told myself, you don't need to be loud to be done. Over the next 2 weeks, I changed my behavior in small, quiet ways. I stopped funding chaos. When Brielle mentioned a business expense that sounded like another shopping spree in a different outfit, I said, no. She laughed at first, thinking I was joking. When she realized I wasn't, her voice sharpened. What is wrong with you lately? She demanded. Nothing, I said. I'm just not doing that anymore. She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. In a way, she hadn't. Brielle tried every tactic she had. Charm, anger, tears that appeared fast and disappeared faster. She'd soften her voice and say, babe, are you okay? Talk to me. When I didn't rush to reassure her, she'd switch. You're punishing me, she accused. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm choosing. That word, choosing, made her restless. Brielle could handle conflict. What she couldn't handle was a calm man who wouldn't argue back, because arguing meant she still had access. Deshaun noticed too. He came by one evening, rummaged through our fridge, and said, Doc, you've been acting funny. I looked at him. Have I? He smirked. Don't start with me, man. My sister said, you've been having a weird time. I nodded slowly. Tell your sister I'm fine. Deshaun rolled his eyes. Whatever. She's still my sister. I know, I said. That's the problem. He blinked, thrown off by my tone. Not angry, not pleading, just clear. Brielle's disrespect didn't stop. If anything, it got sharper when she felt control slipping. She criticized my tone, my boundaries, my attitude, like she couldn't understand why the old levers weren't working. She tried to provoke me into a blow-up so she could label me the villain. I didn't give her that. I started sleeping in the second bedroom because of my schedule, which was true and also convenient. I woke up earlier, went to the gym, and let the iron and silence do what shouting never could. One night, she stood in the doorway of the guest room, arms folded, cinnamon gum snapping like a countdown. So, you're really going to do this? She asked. Do what? I said. Act like I don't exist. I sat up slowly. You exist, I said. You just don't get to run my life. Brielle laughed, short, sharp. Oh my God. Listen to you. She shook her head. You're not leaving me, Jordan. Her certainty was almost impressive. It was also exactly why she'd kept escalating. The paperwork moved quietly in the background. Nia gave me a checklist. I followed it like a protocol. Separate finances, secured documents, change passwords, confirm lease options, keep communication clear and minimal. I didn't hide money. I didn't do anything reckless. I did everything the way I do medicine, by the book. It wasn't about winning. It was about leaving with my dignity intact and my life unentangled. I kept receipts. I kept records. Calm doesn't mean carelessness. The first real consequence Brielle felt wasn't emotional. It was practical. A payment came due that she'd assumed I'd handle. She brought it up casually while scrolling. I need you to cover this today, she said, like she was asking me to pick up milk. I didn't raise my voice. No, I said. She looked up slowly. Excuse me? I'm not covering it, I repeated. Brielle stared like she was watching a magic trick. Then her face tightened. You're really doing this to me? I'm not doing anything to you, I said. I'm stopping what I've been doing for you. Brielle's eyes flashed. So what? You're trying to humble me? No, I said. I'm trying to protect myself. She scoffed. Protect yourself from what? Me? Her laugh was mean. You act like I'm some villain. I looked at her for a long moment. You don't have to be a villain to be harmful, I said. That landed hard because it was calm and true. After that, reality tightened slowly, like a belt being pulled one notch at a time. Brielle's business wasn't collapsing dramatically. It was just strained. Clients delayed payments. Her team stopped responding quickly when she couldn't pay on time. A car declined at a restaurant in Hyde Park, and she laughed it off too loudly while her friend looked away. Deshaun got harder to reach when help meant effort, not money. The people who loved the perks didn't love the responsibility. Brielle had built her life on assumptions. Assumptions don't pay bills. Brielle tried to re-establish control by escalating the disrespect again. Sharper words, more public snipes, more little tests. At a small gathering, she joked that I was emotionally unavailable and looked around for laughs. Nobody laughed. Not because they'd suddenly become brave, but because the joke wasn't funny anymore. Later, in the kitchen, Brielle hissed, "See? Now you're embarrassing me." I blinked. I didn't say anything. "Exactly," she snapped. "You're making me look crazy." She was close. She was almost aware. Almost. The day I decided to hand her the papers, I didn't wake up angry. I woke up clear. I did my routine like always: coffee black, jazz low, workout, shower. I packed a duffel bag the way I pack for an overnight call. Clean shirts, toiletries, socks rolled tight, nothing dramatic. The apartment felt normal, which was the strangest part. Downstairs, the laundromat machines hummed. Outside, a bus sided a stop. Life kept going, indifferent. Brielle came home mid-pack, sunglasses on, gum chewing, still in the mood of a woman who believed she ran the room. She stopped when she saw the bag. "What is this?" she asked, laughing once like it was a prank. I zipped the duffel. "I'm moving out," I said. Brielle's smile dropped. She tried confusion first. "Because you're in your feelings about a seat?" Then anger. "Are you serious right now?" I looked at her. "It wasn't the seat," I said. "It was you." Brielle scoffed hard, like she could blow my decision away with disbelief. "Oh my God," she snapped. "So, you just going to throw away a marriage?" I opened the envelope on the table and slid it toward her. "It's separation," I said. She stared at the papers like they were written in another language. "You already?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, quietly. Brielle's hands started shaking. Then she clenched them into fists like she could crush reality. "You did this behind my back." I kept my voice even. "I did it after you did a lot behind mine." Brielle's eyes sharpened. "Don't compare," she snapped. "I never cheated on you." "This isn't about cheating," I said. "It's about disrespect." She laughed, brittle. "You're so dramatic." Then she reached for the lever she always used. "You're not leaving me," she said, stepping closer. "You love me." I held her gaze. "I did," I replied. "You spent that like it was unlimited." That's when she turned cruel, because fear makes some people honest. "You think you're so special because you're a doctor," she spat. "Like women don't line up for you. Please, I can replace you tomorrow." Her voice was loud enough that I knew the downstairs neighbors might hear. Omi would have argued. Omi would have tried to explain. I just nodded once. "I'm sure you'll try," I said. Brielle froze, thrown off by my lack of reaction, like she'd thrown a punch and hit air. Deshawn showed up that evening, because Brielle called him like she always did when she needed backup. He stormed in, chest out, voice loud. "Doc, what are you doing?" he demanded, like he had authority in my home. I looked at him calmly. "I'm leaving," I said. Deshawn laughed. "Man, stop playing." Brielle stood behind him, arms crossed, eyes bright with anger and something close to panic. Deshawn pointed at the papers. "Are you trying to hurt my sister?" I answered evenly. "I'm trying to save myself." Deshawn turned to Brielle. "He's always been soft," he said loudly, like I wasn't there. "He can't handle a strong woman." Brielle's face twisted. She wanted to agree because it felt good. She also wanted to plead because she felt the floor shifting. That mix made her ugly. "See," she snapped at me. "This is why I say you're sensitive. You can't take anything." I picked up my duffel. "No," I said quietly. I just stopped accepting it. Then I walked past them both. The next few weeks weren't dramatic. They were just real. Brielle texted, called, switched tones, tried sweet, then mean, then sweet again. Sometimes she sounded like she missed me. More often, she sounded like she missed what I provided. Stability, money, a quiet man to blame when she felt out of control. Deshawn stopped acting bold when he realized I wasn't funding anything anymore. Brielle's support system thinned the way it always does when benefits disappear. People love you out loud when it costs them nothing. One night, Brielle left a voicemail that was mostly silence and breathing. Then her voice, small, unfamiliar. "Jordan," she said, "I didn't think you'd really do it." I listened once, then deleted it. Not out of spite, out of closure. She didn't think I'd leave because I had trained her not to. By swallowing every insult, I had taught her my dignity was flexible. I hated that truth, but I owned it. Growth doesn't always feel empowering. Sometimes it feels like embarrassment finally turning into wisdom. Months later, on a cold Chicago morning, I walked past the laundromat, heard the machines humming, and realized I could breathe without bracing. My life was quieter cleaner, mine again. I didn't win anything public. I didn't need to. Brielle didn't collapse overnight. She just had to live with the weight of her choices without me holding it up. I kept my routines, my calm, my self-respect, and the last thing I ever gave her was the only thing she couldn't take from me, my silence with a spine. If you made it to the end, you understand this wasn't about a seat. It was about respect. Like the video if you believe dignity is non-negotiable. Subscribe for more real stories like this, and comment spine if you've ever had to choose peace over proving a point. And if you want the next story, I'll pin the one that hits even harder. Check the pin comment. The end.